welcome back to Technical Tip Tuesday. It's your final tip of the month, and our friends at iGuide are sponsoring these tips all month long. We're joined by Kayla Terrio, National Account Executive at iGuide. Well, Kayla, it's our final tip. Welcome back.
Hi, Kayla. Thanks. I think this one's it's gonna be interesting. I like to save the best for last.
Definitely. I will definitely say we saved the best for last. So we've kind of talked about this in depth, and I really want to go to the mindset of what we do every day as a craft. And so this question I think is an important one because while I love investigations and things like that, I think oftentimes we don't really think about our job as such. So, how does approaching every single loss like an investigation help protect the company and better serve all the stakeholders involved?
Yeah, Kayla. I think it's interesting because a restoration professional, they understand investigation in the sense of you're investigating the source of damages, you're investigating the extent of damages, and so they understand how to investigate the property and the actual damage that's on site, and then build a plan from there. But I'd like to take it a step further. I don't think that this is actually talked about a lot in the industry, and you don't know what you don't know until, sometimes it's a little too late. But my background, the last few years prior to iGuide, I worked in a firm that allowed me to have a lot of communication with subrogation professionals. And if anyone's been in restoration long enough, you will eventually run into subrogation and get an understanding of that. I would implore people to think of the loss when we talk about thinking of it like an investigator. Say it's a fire, okay? For example, maybe it's a cooking fire. That's what the insured told you. They left something on the stove and end of story. Okay. Well, a true investigator, while you're investigating the extent of damages and mapping out your plan for a restoration, I want you to think about, like we said, all the stakeholders involved. While you're not, as a restoration professional, it's a joke in the industry. You have a lot of bosses because you want to make the insured happy and do a good job for them. You want to make sure the carrier believes you did a good job, maintain your reputation with them. Building experts, fire O&C experts. There's a lot of people involved, especially when it comes to complex or large losses. So thinking in terms of a situation, say it is a fire like I'm talking about, well, the carrier may very much be interested in, well, what kind of stove is it? Is it, did they just leave something on the stove? Or perhaps that's a stove that there's been a recall on. Maybe there's been, a malfunction with the knobs. That's very common. So to go back to our first point of doing an initial walkthrough with the virtual tour, there may be something that desk adjuster or examiner catches that shows there's potential for subrogation on this claim that you as a restoration professional maybe didn't think about. So when you're approaching it in terms of an investigation, look, you're not taking the place of an expert. You're not getting into O&C. It's not that complicated. It's simply understanding, hey, okay, yes, my job is to make this look like pre-loss, clean everything up, make sure everyone's safe and happy, but just being mindful of what does the carrier or the adjuster, maybe they have some questions. Maybe you could help communicate to the insured some of their questions as well. So simple things like, I would see this all the time working in O&C. If the restoration team isn't knowledgeable in any way about subrogation, they could dispose of evidence. And that's certainly not going to look great for you or your company with the carrier if you've disposed of evidence and they had an opportunity for subrogation. So this happens a lot with fires. They'll throw away the source of the fire, throw away the stove or the appliance, put it out on the street, and then it gets taken by a garbage company or something. Certainly, if you think of something that could be evidence, and this happens more commonly with fires, but preserve evidence. Maybe take some extra documentation of that, rope it off, make sure everyone that's on site on your team understands not to move it, not to throw it away, leave it as is until you get written verification from the carrier that you can dispose of that. There very well may be an expert, a fire O&C expert, a building engineer, consultant, someone who's going to be scheduled to come out soon and wants to inspect that that piece of evidence. So just do your due diligence, make sure you've communicated with everyone and really, take your time. Don't throw things away too quickly. And also on that note, because I know you're like me and we're both fire safety nerds, things that could be involved in fires, think your lithium ion batteries, your electric scooters, your drill battery chargers. If you quickly dispose of that evidence, you could be putting your team at risk of fire safe, like fire hazards. If you throw a lithium ion battery or a scooter that was potentially involved in the fire, say into the back of your truck, that could reignite. There's thermal runaway. So that could reignite while your project manager or you are driving down the road. So something that poses a secondary risk of reigniting a fire, you especially want to make sure your team is mindful of that. I mean, every year we hear more and more about the lithium ion fires and them reigniting. There's a proper way to dispose of certain things, and you want to make sure you're taking precaution to not just preserve evidence, but keep everyone on site safe.
Yeah, and I would definitely say to your point, there are things that we don't necessarily quote unquote know, but as long as we're doing our due diligence of the photos, and if to your point there is a source of a fire, obviously there's going to be fire experts who are coming in to actually assess and understand what completely happened. I mean, things like arson do happen, even though if somebody says, "Hey, I left a pot on my stove," like, there's things like that that do need to be investigated. So it's really, really important that, again, we're not just disposing of stuff too quickly, but also to your point, I think understanding the other parties' roles in this is really important. Again, it's mostly like fires and things like that that have that secondary layer, if you will, but there are a lot of things that go on around batteries and electric scooters and all of these things. I mean, I told you the other day we just had an electric car catch on fire here at the airport and it ignited 5 additional cars. And so, to your point, you may be putting yourself, your team, and others at risk, right? Because you do have to park that vehicle somewhere. And that's why it's important to understand the proper procedures of disposal. We also have to document that as well to get paid for it and things like that. So, this technology and understanding plays a huge role in everything that we do every single day. And we did save the best for last. Maybe that's a little bias of me, but before we sign off, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think our greatest asset in this industry is truly all the experts that we come in contact with. If you don't know something, you can't possibly know everything about an engineer's business, a subrogation attorneys, a fire ONC expert. Like everyone has their specialty, their lane that they need to stay in, but just ask. Keep that communication going. Like we're talking about over and over, utilize the tools you have, share virtual tours, ask questions. If there's another expert on the loss, ask questions. What I guarantee you, I have found in this industry, if you stay curious and you show others that you really want to learn and you want to grow in your career and be a true expert, everyone's very willing to help. They want to teach. They want to make sure that everyone involved is doing the right thing to the best of their abilities. So ask questions, use your technology, and just keep doing a good job.
Yeah, I would definitely say great tips there because I would say we can do our jobs efficiently and effectively, but you mentioned this earlier, what you don't know, you don't know. And it's okay to ask the questions because chances are someone beside you has the same question and it's better to ask the questions there than get to the end of the job and say like, "Oh, well, I didn't know how to do it, so I didn't do it." Because then what does that representation look like? Not only for you as an individual, but the business that you represent. And that's not a great way to leave a lasting impression for the carrier, the adjuster, any other industry professionals you're dealing with, and most importantly, the customer, right? Because we know that the customer is the one that's affected at the end of the day. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for this opportunity to sit down and talk to you all month long about some key technical tips that the industry needs to know about. For all of you watching, thank you for tuning in to this month's technical tips. Take care.